Now, that turned out to be as fun as I thought it could be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was interesting. It was very different. I thought, when you can't ever tell if it's going to be a good one until you start going, and it's like, okay, that was pretty fun.
Well, it was all of the subjects that I really wanted to touch on. I think we touched on in a way that, I don't know. It just seemed like it was. Most people have never even thought about how they have been propagandized. They just haven't done it. And whenever it seems to me that people are starting to wake up in the country and around the world, but they know something's wrong.
I think there's definitely that starting.
I mean, whenever you start to see hundreds of thousands of people starting to protest in Austria, Australia, Gibraltar, the Caribbean, all these other different islands everywhere, that's a very positive sign for humanity breaking out and putting these souls that are control of governments that have all that crap covering up their wonderful soul that they just keep piling more crap onto to cover it up.
This could be a good thing. As much as we hate it and despise everything that's going on in the world, maybe in the end it will turn out to be a good thing because the people will finally rise up and say that bread and circuses aren't enough, that we're not going to just let you have everything, so we might start thinking for ourselves.
God, I hope so.
I mean, you never can tell, but at least it's some spark of hope that we can, and we're doing what we can.
Yeah, we're pushing out everything that we think will not be censored, things that we think we can talk about the soul and the spirit, because that is what we do. That's our primary thing that we do is focus on the individual self, because if the individual self is good, that means the greater community is good. When you see bad souls and bad attitudes and bad people and authoritarian bullies and all these things everywhere, that creates problems. And when you can see healthier people that can have reasonable conversations, people that value logic more than opinion or more than something they think is true, but they have no basis for that belief, like the current condition in the world right now. I've heard this many times recently. Well, I think it's people's choice, but I also, I've done my research, and I think they work. Well, so it's obvious they've never done anything.
Of course,
it's obvious. It's just like the same way with most
like
people with the Bible.
That cop out of it's above my pay grade or something like that. I've done my research to make. Everybody wants to put on a show that they've done more than they've really done.
It's kind of like with traders. Everybody wants to talk up their own book.
Oh yeah, of course they do.
It's the same thing.
Everybody wants to talk up their own book. Everybody wants to talk up their own life.
Which makes it to another subject that I'd like for us to discuss is the ego, and how the ego can either be a friend or foe, and in most cases it is a foe.
That is one thing that I think we didn't talk about in this video, which I would like to explain more, is the ego, friend or foe, and the plants and herbs that can get you to explore that more, that are deemed illegal by these powers that be. But again, this is one of the things that we struggle with, is censorship of how are these things going to go on, because we have to deal with a lot of same creative strains being out in the open with our church here.
It's really a problem that does go into that's one thing that we didn't touch on in the last video, was how there are natural substances on this planet that if you use them, you will be kidnapped and put into a cage for exploring your own consciousness in a way that has been proven to be beneficial for depression, that has been proven to help addictions, which has been proven to help terminally ill patients, which has been proven to help people overcome their fears of many things, including death.
Not just the fear of that, but the fear of your own ego and how big you think you are of a person.
Dissolving your ego. There are so many things that the governments have restricted us from. on purpose. It's almost no different than them adding fluoride to the water just to calcify your pineal gland. It's the same thing. You don't want to have those kind of things, which I find it fascinating that we're having an explosion of conversations about all the places from Costa Rica, Peru, around the world with ayahuasca. And
we know the mass people want these things.
Yeah,
if they don't think they want them now, they're being talked and having the conversation, which is where it all starts.
Yeah, and whenever you start hearing all the positive things that have come, for instance, I was watching Joe Rogan with Ron White the other day. He was talking about Ron White, the comedian, who was just fabulously funny. He says he went down to Costa Rica, and it was a nicer kind of resort place, and he had his shamans and all this stuff, and it was great. If you haven't seen it, look it up. Oh, if we're still even talking. But it was so great because he was talking about, he went in for the first time. He didn't really think it was for him, but he gave it like he wasn't sure about it. He left the first night a little apprehensive about doing it again, and then he said the second time it was just like this opening up thing. Like the first night was like, hey, you're a dick. You need to change these ways.
There's a lot of people that have that story.
A lot of people.
I'm just getting
just like Graham Hancock had said too. Mother Ayahuasca helped him break some of his addictions. And then he was talking about this girl that freaked him out that was in part of their group. And he said this girl starts screaming and hollering and moving all like swinging and shit. And he says, well, it freaked everybody out in the group. They had to restrain her and tie her down.
Really?
Until it was over, and she was just freaked out. And then after she came back into her body, she big smile. She said it was the best experience of her life. She was able to fight off and cured of all these feelings and deep-seated emotions from being abused as a child.
That's a great point. I don't know why we don't allow more people to do these things. I feel like that we live in the 21st century where we have machines to, really do almost everything. People talk about doing laundry as a hard job, but think about how hard it was 100 years ago. You got to go out to the rock and beat your fucking clothes.
That cracks me up every time I hear that crap.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, what are you talking about? You put the clothes in there,
and
you hit the button, and you leave.
Yeah, like it does all the work. So there's like nothing to it. So in this age of everything is digital, everything's mechanical, like driving's not even a difficult experience. Like everything is so easy. It's so comfortable. Why don't we have the time or encourage to figure out the mysteries of life? And I agree that, if you do, it's better to find these things on your own through the deep breathing methods and all that. But if you need to take a shortcut just to get started or to get an opening, to get your foot in the door, I think it is absolutely perfect for people to do ayahuasca or DMT or LSD or marijuana, anything.
As long as people, if you're doing, like I'm definitely not an advocate of conventional drugs like heroin, crack, that meth. That just seems, that's just absurd. But those are life-killing things. But there are known very beneficial things that help the health of the psyche. All of which are none of my business what an individual does.
Yeah, if you want to do any of those things, you should be allowed to do them.
The only restriction is as long as I'm not causing harm to someone else. If it's my body, I've heard arguments from this guy was like he was just one of the typical. It's just not a superiority complex cop figure, second in command over here in the county. He was just a total jackass, which I definitely don't mind saying to his face. Everything's a gateway drug or something. Well, it's been proven for sure that psychedelics are not addictive at all.
And who really cares if it is?
Who cares if it is? But they're known not to be addictive. They are known to be very healing, just like Timothy Leary and Ram Dass with their Harvard studies and their crazy experiments. Of course, many of you probably know who they are. If you don't, look up Ram Dass.
Yeah, Ram Dass. That's the guy I was trying to think of earlier.
Yeah, I mean, they're spiritual towers. And, and Nixon, which goes back to our previous video, I mean, he said, Timothy Leary is the most dangerous man in America because he was promoting LSD at the time. Well, hell yeah, that's very dangerous to the establishment because if everybody in the United States had a LSD psychedelic experience, well, for one, they're going to realize they don't need government. They do realize how important love is and connection is, and they're going to come away with a largely dissolved ego where they are not assholes as much as they were before.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be the result. And then they're going to realize, oh, we don't need all this government everywhere in our lives. So Nixon was right in saying that he's the most dangerous man in America to the establishment.
Oh yeah.
For sure. And that is that's crazy.
I think it's so funny when people say that something's a gateway drug because a lot of people like to do car references, especially in the time we're at now. You hear people say, oh, it's like getting a license to drive. You have to have a license from the government to go eat out. You need that little card. And my counter argument to that is, okay, if all these things are gateway drugs, then isn't driving 35 a gateway drug? Because on your speedometer it has 110. So isn't that a gateway drug to put somebody in a car going 35 or 50? Well, you've given them the power to go 100 or over 100 miles an hour. It's on a speedometer. Every car will do it. Isn't that a gateway drug? Nobody's concerned about that. No, of course they're not. It's because it's a stupid argument. Marijuana is not a gateway drug. And if you did want to do a harder drug like heroin or crack or whatever, as long as you're not stealing from your grandma or doing something stupid, I don't care if you do that. As long as you're not impinging on my freedom, it's your body and it's your life. And as far as we know, you get one time around. And if that's how you want to spend your time, I mean, I'm not going to tell you can't do it. It's not something that I personally want to do.
What we should have in this country is for those harder drugs where people have gotten addicted, instead of chunking them into jail, having real rehabilitation centers.
And it would be a lot cheaper.
Not only a lot cheaper, it would be a lot more beneficial. Those people would not be stigmatized. Those people would not be treated as outcasts. They would not be treated as crazy criminals when they just have addictions. I'm not talking about the ones that break into people's houses and steal and rape and do crazy crap. I'm talking about just people that have got addicted to something. That would change the game. But see, you can't do that because you have an authoritarian, mostly private and public jail systems that are for profit, and they have quotas they got to meet. So they got to arrest so many people and put them in there.
That's why we're the land of the free, and we have more people incarcerated in this country than every other country. As a matter of fact, if you take the population of China and India, the United States has more people in jail than they do, and not per capita. We just have more people. And they have a population of China of 1.6 billion and India at 1.4 billion people. So let's just say that there's 3 billion people and we have 300 million and we have more people incarcerated, and that's 300 million, 3 billion. That's an extra zero moved over 10 times. 10 times less people, and they have less people in jail than we do.
It seems kind of gross. It goes back to that whole propaganda thing. People just don't realize how propagandized they are.
Yeah, land of the free. But we
say land of the free. I mean, if you want to sell flowers, you have to have a license. If you want to get married, you have to have a license. If you want to do anything in this country, you have to have permission. If you want to go protest against your government, you have to go ask the government for a permission slip to protest against them. Yeah. I mean, it's just so absurd. And people, I think, are slowly coming to the realization that it's just really absurd, and the spiritual nature that's within ourselves needs to come through and shine. It's the only savior for humanity, is to realize that we are the cosmic dust. We are flying through space as we talk right now. We are of this earth. We are fluid in that our body's changing nonstop. We are a vehicle for our consciousness, and that consciousness has to be explored in a way that is not tempered and tampered by authoritarian figures through governments worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, worldwide. There is no escape. I mean, right now, I mean, a couple of years ago, you'd say, oh, what's a good country to retire to? What's a really more free spot on earth? And the last 2 years have proven that this virus that has penetrated our world, and I don't mean the one with a C in it, I mean the one with a G in it, that virus has been so pervasive that there's nowhere to run and there's nowhere to hide. You are stuck everywhere.
Everywhere. We're stuck everywhere. That's until people explore inside themselves and realize what is true and what is not true, and do their own research, and they say, "Oh well, I've done my research." So you haven't done your research just because you listen to the nightly news.
No, or you listen to some other figure that has told you, like the Faucis of the world, or any of the other health ministers or czars or whatever they want to bill themselves as. That's not doing your research.
It is absurd. Well, let's go find our wives out in the church playground out there and go visit with them. What do you say?
Let's go do it.
Let's go do it.
And
sir.
if I didn't say it before, have a good day.